So we begin today's webinar. I just would like to thank the initiator of this whole webinar, Cape Electrics, who's celebrating 25th year of existence in the business. Cape Electric, established in 1996. Cape are the first and front runner in various technological products in India, be it lighting, protection, or electrical insulation materials. The reactive power compensation panels marked its quality during the initial years of establishment of the company. In difficult environment condition, inside the wind turbine tower, working at high temperature, very high harmonic distortion, and frequent change in reactive power and demand. In 2002, DC combiner solutions were unknown. Cape delivered the first outdoor DC panel for solar PV industry. Cape Electrical seminars and webinars on lighting protection not only help industries in solving failures related to lighting, surges, and earthing, but gave an in-depth knowledge about international standards. Providing solution is the motto, and hence the technical team in Cape Electrics are continuously trained to provide the end-to-end solution from design to implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, today's subject is about data center. One pulse can they survive from EMP? We have very distinguished keynote speaker, Dr. DC Pandey from DRDO, and which is LRD of DRDO. And we have our subject speaker, Mr. S. Gopakumar. We are very honored. We are blessed to have Dr. DC Pandey, former outstanding scientist, Electronic and Radar Development Establishment, LRD, received his bachelor and master degree in electronics from Garhwal University, India, and PhD in applied physics from University of Allahabad in India in 1974, 1976, 1982, respectively. Presently, he is Dr. Raja Ramanna's Distinguished Fellow of DRDO. Since 1981 with LRD, Minister of Defense India, where he was involved in the design and development of electromagnetic interference control technique for ground-based airborne and shipborne equipments and systems. He had started research activity in the field of NEMP and HEMP in India. Besides, he was also involved in the electromagnetic design of various radar systems, combat aircraft, and other combat vehicle of the country. He was also involved in design and development and evaluation of various types of antennas for many radar programs of DRDO. He was awarded Certificate of Achievement by SUMA, Foundation of USA in 1989, Commendable Certificate IGMDP in 1990, Hemant Saha Memorial Award of IETE in 1994, EMC Engineer of the Year 1998, Lab Scientist of the Year 2003, National Science Day Award of 2004 by DRDO. DRDO Scientist of the Year Award 2005 by Prime Minister of India in 2006. DRDO Technology Group Award in 2011, Certificate of Achievement by the Chief of Naval Staff in 2014, and Professor S.N. Ghosh Award of IET in 2015. He has been elected to the grade of Fellow of HPEM, Fellows Committee, SUMA Foundation of USA in 2016. The list goes on. There are some more awards which I could have read out, but I would like Ms. Dr. DC Pandey to, come over and address this gathering. We're very keen to understand from you about EMP and its effects, sir. Over to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Uh, Thank you very much, Dominic, and it is a great pleasure for me to be there in this morning to address you the subject which is very close to my heart. I'm practicing this subject for last 40 years, so I thought that, okay, today I can share this one. So I will share my presentation. Once again, good morning to all of you, and that it is great pleasure for me to be there to discuss about this nuclear electromagnetic pulse resulting from the nuclear detonation, the protection of the data centers. And the thing that, okay, what I will be talking to you, because the subject may not be known to the lot of people that, okay, what we discuss in our defense arena, but I will start with the very beginning of this particular subject. So whenever that, okay, nuclear detonation takes place from a surface burst or from any mid-altitude burst or from the exo-atmospheric burst, these are the products which comes out of the nuclear detonation. The first thing what we see is the light flash. Then we see the thermal radiation where the temperature is very high. Then we see the blast. Then we see the atmospheric disturbances. Then we see the fallout. And then there is one of the most important thing which is very concerned to the electronics people is the initial nuclear radiation, where the neutrons and gammas are the major thing. And these neutrons and gammas, when they result, it results into the two type of the effects to the electronics. One is called the transient radiation effects on the electronics, what we call it the tree. And the second effect, which is the most devastating, is the electromagnetic pulse. So whenever I say that, okay, I will just give you a history that, okay, in 1962, when the US had an exo-atmospheric burst, a high altitude burst at the height of 400 kilometers above the ground. So then it was in the Johnson et al. So that this was about a 1.4 megaton. So this the thing that, okay, this was the report which came out of this one. The nuclear pulse that can paralyze a nation. It happened on July evening during an atomic test in 1962. A rocket lifted off from the Johnston atoll, a speck in the Pacific 800 miles southwest of Hawaii. At a point in space 248 miles above the Earth, the rocket turned into a ball of nuclear fire. All of a sudden, a greenish white light flash lit up all of Hawaii, recalled a witness. The sky started turning pink and orange and red. The heavens were filled with the ghastly light. Not just the heavens aspired of that evening. Something so unexpected happened that today, after the 2 decades what they wrote that time in 83, 2 decades later, military planners still ponder its dark implication for the fighting of the nuclear war. A second or so after the flash, the Hawaii Islands were plagued by the problem with the things electrical. In widely separated part of the Oahu, 300 street lights winked out, their fuses blown, burglar alarms started ringing, and power lines went dead. Honolulu headlines the next day attributed the breakdown to a nuclear shockwave. So it means there was something which was happening, and this was reported by the Russians at that time, the USSR, and the similar events took place in the case of our, and the UK was doing certain tests of this type of the nuclear detonation test. They have found that a lot of electronics is just getting damaged. So after that, this particular field became very classified and remained in the you know, it was not much of the literature. It came till the mid of the 80s. So now that, okay, when the detonation takes place, what comes first? The first thing comes the gamma radiations, and this gamma radiation interact with the environment, and that it comes the nuclear electromagnetic pulse. Then comes the neutrons, which is in the microsecond to millisecond time. Then comes the thermal radiation, which is in the millisecond to fraction of a second. And then comes the blast or shock wave. This is the time in which the thing comes. So what actually happens is that, okay, when the EMP generation, how this electromagnetic pulse gets generated, when that, okay, either fission or fusion is taking place, this nuclear energy is 4 into 10 to the power 12 joules per kiloton. Out of that, 0.1% of the energy goes in the prompt gammas, which are the immediate gamma radiation which is coming, which is about 4 into 10 to the power 9 joules per kiloton. And these Compton electrons, prompt gamma generates the Compton electrons, and these Compton electrons results into the asymmetry in the environment due to the electromagnetic field, which we call the electromagnetic pulse. It is about 0.001% of the total nuclear detonation. It means 4 into 10 to the power 7 joule per kiloton is the energy in the electromagnetic pulse. So what happens, the type of the bus, what we classify in case of the nuclear detonation, we say that, okay, first bus is called the surface bus, which is about 0 to 2 kilometers. Then we say the mid-altitude bus, which is the 2 to 40 kilometers. Then we say the exo-atmospheric bus, which is more than the 40 kilometers. And then we have got the electromagnetic environment around the bus, that, okay, where that, okay, we have got the other particles, means that, okay, alpha, beta, gamma, nuclear radiation, gammas, and other things which are there, that particular region, and that is called the deposition region. And where that after the deposition region, we get only the electromagnetic field, and that particular region is called the radiation region. And so we are more concerned about this radiation region. And now the thing that, okay, I give you just a small mechanism of the how this EMP gets generated. See, the when the burst is taking place, gamma radiation which are coming, they are knocking down the air molecule and coming out these electrons called the Compton electrons. And this flow of these Compton electrons, there is a asymmetry between the earth and the air. So this generates the electromagnetic field. In the case of mid-altitude bus, there's the air density which is varying, that generates the electromagnetic field. And in the case of exo-atmospheric bus, it is the Earth's magnetic field in which the electrons are going to spiral around the thing, and they act as a phase array antenna, and the electromagnetic field keeps on radiating. In the case of the exo-atmospheric burst, we call it is an EMP bomb. There's no other effects to the ground except the electromagnetic pulse. It means that somebody is radiating with the huge antenna from the space towards the ground, electromagnetic wave. There's no blast, there's no shock, there's no radiation, because everything gets absorbed by the atmosphere. So this particular one is the deposition region in the case of surface bus. This is the deposition region in the case of mid-altitude bus. This is the deposition region in the case of the extra-atmospheric bus. This deposition region depends upon how high you are. So accordingly, the deposition region, so according the coverage goes higher. Now, when that, okay, we have got the surface bus, we have got the electromagnetic pulse, which gets generated. It's a very fast rise time pulse, which is about the 50, around some tenths of nanosecond, with the duration of some microsecond time. And corresponding the very strong magnetic field, this is in the very close to the detonation. But when we go away from the detonation, then the field is something like exponential pulse, with some, positive portion of this. And there the field which is about at this particular place at the deposition is at 10,000 volts per meter. 10,000 volts per meter field is a very strong field, very strong field. Even in our radar, when we have got the very high power radar, we generate the field of, if we say at a kilometer of the distance, it is about, say, 500 to 400 volts per meter. So the energy of this type of the thing is very much concentrated in the lower frequency. In the case of surface bus, it is 90% energy up to the tens of kilohertz, and that energy density is about 1 kilojoule per meter square. So this is in the case of the surface bus. Now you can see that, okay, if the burst is taking about, say, 1 megaton burst is taking, so that a field is going to fall. So at a distance of up to the 10 kilometer, at the distance of 2 kilometers from the bus, the field is as large as about 2 kilovolts per meter. And these are the very strong field per meter. And if the people, those who protect the electronic system, may be protecting the electronic system for 10 volts per meter, 20 volt per meter. And this is for the civilian one. In the case of our defense, we protect for 50 volts, 60 volts, and the 200 volt per meter field system. So that, okay, 2 kilowatt means a 2000 volt, and when the 20 volt is 100 times more than that. So this is the type of the field which will be get generated. So that there is a lot of electronics which are very susceptible to this type of the field get damaged. So the typical thing that, okay, if I see that, okay, the electromagnetic field at the tens of kilometer from the, a burst of say 10 kiloton can give me the 10, 5 kilovolt per meter, 2 kilovolt per meter, around say 500 volt per meter at 100 kilometer off from that. So one has to be very careful, and this particular field gets coupled to the systems accordingly. Then the magnetic field is equally very high. It is so much of the 13 amperes per meter, and at a distance of 100 meter, it will be about a 1.2 amperes per meter. So you can see that, okay, energy as far as about say 50 meters is 1.32 millijoule per meter square is our energy density. And if you see our electronic system, even if we say the microwave diode, which is in the front of the most of the receivers, is about say 10 to power minus 7 to 10 to power minus 4 joules of the energy which it can handle. So that, okay, then whenever that, okay, we have to plan of the system from the surface burst, it is the thing that, okay, we make a template. Template means we make the blast, we make the thermal, we make the transient radiation protection of the electronics. And the transient, that it is in the shelters or underground, or it is, open, and then we say the EMP. So this is the synergetic effect for which the whole system is to be protected. So that, okay, if I am very close in the B1 region, which is the real blast, or say T1 region, where the temperature is as large as 10 to the power 5 degree Kelvin or something like that, nothing will survive in this particular place. So we plan that, okay, at what distance from the how far, maybe a 500 meter onwards. So we start protecting that time that, okay, when we have to protect our facility, not from the blast, thermal, this tree, as well as the, our electromagnetic pulse, which is the electromagnetic effects. So it depends upon the thing that, okay, it is a ground zero or it is the height of the burst, then the deposition region keep on increasing, because when the fireball forms, when it is at the height. So now that, okay, coming to the exoatmospheric burst, which I was telling to you that, okay, it is due to the exoatmospheric burst. It is called the electromagnetic pulse. In this particular one, there is no other effects other than the electromagnetic field. And this particular field becomes a very high. It is a double exponential field. And its peak amplitude is as large as something 50,000 volts per meter. Is a 50,000 for 1 meter, and its rise time is about say few nanoseconds, about say 1.8 nanosecond, and its duration, half duration, is about say 25 nanosecond. Now you can think that, okay, which system will respond to protect this particular system. Of course, we have got the lightning is the natural resource which gets generated, but lightning is in the microseconds. It is in the microsecond. So microsecond, there's enough time from the nanosecond to nanosecond is 1,000 times. So the devices to be protected, by the time they respond to that, the whole of this electromagnetic energy from the EMP goes to the electronics, and electronics get both functional damage or operationally upset. It can happen. So the energy in this particular one is the thing that, okay, what we have got is about say 10th of megahertz. And this particular one means that 10th of megahertz, and its frequency components is as about the 500 megahertz. So that anything which is in this particular band of the frequency will get coupled to that energy and will go to the electronic system. So that, okay, depending upon, because I will concentrate more on the high altitude electromagnetic pulse, because that is the most devastating effect without having any other effects or the nuclear effects. So suppose when the height of the burst is the thing that, okay, it is about the 100 meters. So that deposition region which forms is the different, is about, say, this is the distance, about, say, 400 meters. So if it is that about 200 meters, it is forms around, say, 650 meters. And that is the height of bus is 300 kilometers. It is reaching about, say, 1,000 kilometers. So that, okay, you just see that, okay, on the top of that, the deposition region will be such a large, means that, okay, it is about the 1,200 kilometers. So then it means that there are that, that EMP which gets generated by this particular pulses. We have got nowadays 3 pulses, which is the IEC specifications. And in this one, the E1 pulse is the fastest pulse, is a very short pulse. Its rise time is 0.1, 0.8 nanosecond. To the 23 is the half magnitude and half, the full width. E2 is the pulse, something similar to the your lightning pulse. It is the rise time is in the microsecond to the millisecond. And that, okay, we have got the third pulse, E3 pulse, which is in the few seconds to the tens of seconds. And so, okay, most devastating effects which can call to the electronics by this particular E1 pulse, because it is such a fast turn. E2 pulse, of course, we keep on taking the care from the lightning protection, lightning electromagnetic pulse, which is in the thing. And then the E3 is the under the effect, which is the critical infrastructure, particularly the power grids, is a very important. It is like the geomagnetic storms, and its energy is enormous energy in this particular pulse. And frequency wise, if you see, the E3 is in the hundreds of hertz, and E2 is about, say, a megahertz, and E1 comes about in the frequency domain, it comes about, say, megahertz. So this is that complete, this is the synergetic of the all these one. E1 from the Compton string, and the E2 pulse, which is from the scattered gammas and the neutrons, and MSD pulse is the E3 pulse, which is from the geomagnetic field, which is getting displaced by the hot plasma of the nuclear detonation, which generates this pulse. So now the coverage, as I was telling that, okay, as the height of the burst, and you can say that, okay, how much radius it will cover, or say how much height area it will cover in the thing. So I have given you the figure that if I have a detonation over the Nagpur at a height of the 100 kilometers, a detonation of the 1 megaton of the weapon, which is the strategic weapons, it will be covering like this one. If I have the 200 kilometer, then the detonation can cover this much. If it is a 300 kilometer, it goes about, say, covering the all, all the neighboring countries also. So this is the type of the thing. In this one, there no other effect is coming except that, okay, we have got the electromagnetic pulse which is coming. So that if in the case of surface bus, about, say, kilometers distance, all the electronics which will be there, they will all burn, right? You can see that, okay, about, say, 400 meters, 500 meters if they are not protected. In the case of the extra-atmospheric bus, we have got the power lines, we have got the telephones line, we have got the radar system, we have got our communication system. All will get damaged by this particular field, because such a strong field of the will be there. Then we have got that in the case of extra-atmospheric bus, again, that, okay, our airborne system, aircrafts which are flying get affected. We have got the missiles which have got the, in the silos, or whether they are there. Then we have got the different cables and the different wires, communication wires will get affected. And even the missiles which are on the path of that one, they will also get exploded. The electronics will get affected by this. Even the satellites which will get affected by the, which we call the system generated EMP, the gammas which are coming towards the earth, they will go up also, and they will hit directly to the satellites. And when they will hit directly to the satellite, then satellites, that there will be current will get induced, and these currents will generate the very strong fields, and that particular called the system generated EMP. So that is requires the different type of the protection for the satellites also. And even that, these missiles, which are the strategic missiles, which are kept in the silos, will get affected by the type of the field. You can see that, okay, this is about a 10 kilovolt per meter. The current is about, about a kiloamperes of the current which gets induced in this one. So one has to be very careful about protecting these systems. So just for some time, I did some calculation that what will be the probability of protection of these particular systems. So then, okay, it comes about that, the almost certain failure with this type of the thing if the electronics is not protected with the type of the protection which is required for these systems. Now, when we are talking about the protection scenario of this one, so we say that, okay, we don't do everything protection, then it becomes very expensive. We identify which are the vital systems in a system. Then we identify which are the essential systems. Then we say that, okay, these are the desirable, and there are may not be very essential for the mission critical system. For that one, sorry. Then we do that, grading accordingly. The system grading according to the mission critical, how critical that particular system is, right? How critical is particular system is. Then assign the priority among the critical subsystems. In that one, in the critical systems, also this particular system is there. Suppose, say, for example, an aircraft. We don't bother for our radar to get damaged. We don't bother for our EW system to get damaged. We say that, okay, electronic control system of the engine should not get affected. Ground to air communication system should not get affected. We have to bring the pilot back, because to make a pilot, it takes 24 years minimum to make a pilot. So that you cannot afford to, lose the pilot with this type of the activities. So that these are called critical systems, safety critical system are the first priority in the airborne systems. Right. So similarly for our communication, the communication system or the radar system, which are the ballistic missile defense system, and just putting from the defense point of view, I will come afterwards sometime that, okay, civilian point of view. Identify all mission critical input and output circuit containing unprotected sensitive components. So they have to be protected. Determine damage upset threshold sensitive components. Okay. So this is the thing. Now that the protection scheme, again, it comes that, okay, we have the non-threat when we are not expecting that, okay, nuclear detonation will not take place just like that. So we have to see that, okay, what are the protection we provide in this type of the system, non-threat place, how they are being protected. Then the pre-threat, when there is a, red book gets open, yes, there is a threat is going to come, then how you are going to do it, you arm yourself. Then the threat, and the after threat, that what is the post threat, I mean that, okay, how you have to protect your system, what the way that suppose there is some communication has gone down, what is the redundancy in that type of the thing has to be seen. So how that, okay, when we are looking into the design point of view that, okay, how do you do? First, the thing that, okay, we do the design analysis. As I told you that, okay, what are the electromagnetic characteristics of the particular system, of these weapons, whether it's a surface bus, mid-altitude bus, or exo-atmospheric bus. Once we do the know the field labels, when we do the design analysis, and once we do the design analysis, we say how much field has been got coupled into those systems in terms of the open circuit voltage and short circuit current. And from there, then we start incorporating the protection. What the type of protection to be done, whether it's a non-linear amplitude limiting protection or the frequency limiting protection. Once the protection has been done on that particular facility, then it is to be done. EMP is to be simulated, and it is to be tested by the simulated environment, and to see that, okay, whether they are complying with the requirements. Then the hardness assurance testing. And that when we do the protection, it starts from the design. You can't do that, okay, retrofit in this type of the protection. What the thing that, okay, you start component label, you do the circuit label, you do the equipment label, you do the subsystem label, and then you do the system label. So it goes from the bottom to up. right from the design stage, component selection, to the circuit design, to equipment design, subsystem design, to system design. So the different incorporation has to be done. So when we do at the component level, we have got we make the less sensitive components. I won't go very detailed into that, but circuit levels is the terminal protection devices. We call the TPDs. TPDs are the linear and the non-linear protection devices. Then we design the circuit, which we do all in the EMI EMC design. The same thing is being done in the case of the nuclear electromagnetic pulse. Then we do the circumvention. Of course, the circumvention is not applicable to the EMP. Circumvention is the process by which you sense the event and then switch off your system so that it becomes the more hard. But in the case of the nuclear detonation, EMP is the first thing which comes to reach to the system. Then we have got the equipment, subsystem and system level. We do the zoning, electromagnetic zoning. We do the clustering of the system, layering. Then we do the different cable layout, their configuration, their impedance control, their different type of the shielding. There's a, that super screen cable, their transfer impedance is to be minimum 0.001 milliohm per meter type of the thing. Then the shielding has to be done. Shielding integrity is to be maintained by the gaskets, by the, finger shapes with the honeycomb filters. Then we have to do the grounding schemes. And the different type of the thing, they are the crowfoot grounding, the fishbone grounding is there's this, distributed ground stream. Then we have got the damping. Damping means that, okay, because the pulse which is going to get that one, so the electromagnetic energy has to be get damped by the electromagnetic absorbing materials. Now coming to the critical infrastructure of the country. It is the thing that, okay, everywhere that, okay, you see the electrical power system, telecommunication system, banking and finance, petroleum and natural gas, transportation, food, water, emergency services, space, government, and defense. These are the critical infrastructure. This whole electrical power grid of the country is being controlled by the computer. I mean the SCADA, right? Is controlled. There's nothing to do with the bigger transformer. Is control your whole that, okay, you are generating megawatts of the power of the solar system. That is there is SCADA, that which is controlling everything of that one and that particular one. And these things are all interrelated with each other. Electrical power system defense is related. If the electrical power system is not there, that, okay, how we will work? Is the electrical power system related to the pumping system of the water? It is for the emergency system. It is for the medical systems. So interdependence of various infrastructure facilities. Now this is the SCADA, is a supervisory control and data acquisition system. And this has really revolutionized the industry. Today is the thing everywhere, all electronic. They are the, whether it is the microcontroller or whether it's the embedded systems, all are the small electronic system which is controlling the whole grid, whole system, whole banking system, whole finance system, whole medical system. Everything is being done. And in this particular SCADA, there we have got the digital control system, is the very critical element. And then we have got the programmable logical controllers. That all logical and other thing which has been done. And these are the small electronics which is inside that particular system or inside this one. And that is so vulnerable to this. So all electronic control system that may be used for the data acquisition and control over large and geographical distributed infrastructure systems. Their application is the electrical transmission, distribution, communication, water management, everywhere. This SCADA is everywhere. I see that, okay, these SCADA, I will keep on going to the so many places, keep on seeing that, okay, the type of these circuits, right? This will be their master control unit, from this will be the individual unit, which is connected from the different sensors, relays, pumps, or so many. Now there are so many other IoT things will be coming. So that all the things will be coming to the RTU. From there, it will be the communication link, or is it a LAN, or it's a fiber, it's a microwave link. It comes to the control center. If these particular place, if this thing get damaged, the whole thing is gone. And this type of the wiring and other thing in the SCADA architecture is a small microcontroller or microprocessor or type of the device will be there. And this is the actuator, you know, a type of the thing. You can just see that, okay, this is the most of the thing, civilian side. We have all the liberty that, okay, this is the way that, okay, all the thing has been connected like that. And these are the cables which picks up this all energy. And this particular energy which is being picked up, and they can damage the things. A small energy can damage the whole the thing. It can, operationally upset it, like logic can upset, or it can malfunction, or it can burn the thing. So one has to be very careful about this particular one. And then we have got that another thing that, okay, what we do that, okay, protection of that one, we take that, okay, how lengthy is the cable, what is the long, then we calculate what the type of the field gets induced on that one, then what the type of protection is to be done on this particular cable. If it is fiber, it's fine. But this particular portion after the fiber, that, okay, inside there's the electronic, there are the PCB traces, there are the some connecting cables and other things. They will pick up these fields which are such a strong field which may damage the system. So now that, okay, I will come to some solutions of this particular one. So when we are talking about the solution, this is the one of the impervious shield. If I can make, this is the idealistic case. Nothing can go inside this, or nothing can come outside of it, right? But in practice, I will not have a system like this. I will not have impervious shield. I will have a system like that. In this particular building or in this particular facility, there will be the power line will be coming. There is the communication, there is the control cable, there is the antennas, there is the doors will be there, there is the windows will be there, and that is different thing from power is going from one system to other system and all this one. Now suppose we have got the system like this, and it is this type of thing. How we protect this particular system? Then we have got the two type of the solution. With one we call the system level protection. In this one, what we do that, okay, we make this particular is the electromagnetic shielded enclosure, or say topological electromagnetic shielded. Topologically, I mean that, okay, where the openings are there, where from these cables are entering, we provide the protection on this particular place. Rest of the place, it is shielded. Right. So this is the system level. These are the terminal protection devices. And then that, okay, at the doors and the windows and other things, windows means that we make the waveguide below cutoff filters. So this is the type of the thing. So that in this one, again, the secondary level protection we provide at the equipment level. Still, okay, some field can get leak inside that one. That is provided at this equipment level or in the different places. Second one is the thing when the systems are very distributed. In the case of this, most of the systems are distributed. They are not inside a building. They are distributed from here to there. In that case, we do the distributed type of a protection. What we say that, okay, we make the volt here, so the power which is coming, we have the filters here. From there, we run the shielded cables or fiber cables, depending upon the situation. So this has been the distributed type of the protection or topology which has been done. Even that, okay, we don't treat in the case of, because every doors and every surface cannot be treated. We leave it at that one. So we identify which is the place in this room. This is my place where the computer is there, where my system is there. So then we start protecting it. I will show you that, okay, suppose this is a communication facility. This is a communication facility. I have got that, long power head lines. I have got the telephones line. I have got the underground cables which are coming to that. I have got certain antennas, and I have got the ventilation panels. I have got the, some opening ducts and other things. So in this particular one that, okay, what the way that we have to provide the protection. It means that, okay, if it is a shielded enclosure, if the shelters there, is the shielded enclosure there, then what we do that, okay, we provide from all these cables, which is going, we provide a terminal protection device for these cables. We provide the EMP filters, or EMP filters means these are the both non-linear and linear filters. Then we provide the honeycomb filters for the ventilation. Then we provide the doors for the with the finger strips, with the shielded EMI gaskets and other type of the. So this is the way that, okay, done. So I give you an example that, okay, when I was working over the integrated fire control system is the underground facility, where that, okay, that we have the metallic, which is buried under the 3 meter down. And this is the whole facility which was there. So then in this particular one, what we did that, okay, hold the facility hardening for the EMP is not possible. Of course, the earth also gives some of the protection. So if you see this particular one, then how that earth will be protected, some metallic things which are there. So we identified the place. What we did, okay, this is that we did the electromagnetic zoning. This particular zone is called the earth surface. This is called the, that shelter metallic structure. Then it is called the equipment track. So what we found that, okay, which are the penetration which are going where this all electronics. I brought those all electronics at the one place. I mean that what we call as the bringing them, identifying and the clustering them at one place. And then in this particular place, we made that one is the most shielded one, and then provided the each place the protection. I just wanted to tell you that, okay, this is the way that, okay, where that all our data acquisition system, where our communication system, all the thing which was going from that one. So we identify that. And so we concentrated only on that one, because see, I'm not bothered where the power, what is happening to the light and other things. We are more important that, okay, this electronic system, which is controlling the whole thing and the whole NBC protection and all the nuclear, biological, chemical protection and all that type of the thing, which is controlled from here. So we provided that first the thing that, okay, we identified telephone lines and the communication lines. Then we found the control lines, then the power lines and the communication antennas and feed gear. In this case that, okay, in the telephone lines, the filters which is entering inside the facility, this is that is the WD cables and other thing. Though we provided, these are the transient protection, which is called the gas arresters with the varistors type of the thing. Then we have got the some type of the ferrites, which was that because when the clamping takes some resonance take, then we have the common mode rejection filters. And we have got the slightly faster device. These are slightly slower device. These are the faster device, which we call the turn jobs. The type of the things has been protected, and this is the type of the thing which is made. But of course, these are the very we have made this one that with the industry is making that one in the very small, maybe about say a small box can be made about the 4 lines, 5, 6 line type of the cables. Then we have the power lines. Power lines also has got the thing that, okay, we move after the circuit breaker, we put these filters because circuit breaker won't be able to respond to that one. Circuit breaker will be responding in the millisecond of the time, but the pulse, which I told you that it comes in the nanosecond, so that we have to provide the protection by that very fast devices. These gas arresters, which are there, GD tube and other thing, they are filled with the radioactive material so they can respond faster. Because for the GD tube which are available, one has to be careful. Those are being used for the lightning are different because they are a microsecond, but it is in the nanosecond. So it has to be accordingly. Then we have got the other EMI EMC filter with the feed through with the common mode rejection filters. So these are the filters. Then we have got that, coaxial line that, okay, antenna is the one of the most important thing, but these antennas are that, has got the impedance of the 50 ohm or 75 ohm, so that, okay, one has to be careful about protecting. These are the gas arresters which have been full so that it doesn't affect the impedance of that. So these are the type of the protection which has been in the that our antennas and the coaxial cables. So now that, okay, if the facility is not the shielded one and other thing, then in that case, if it's the RCC facility, what we do that one, we have got a generator, which is the most important thing. Is electronics is very susceptible to that. Okay, we harden this generator for the electromagnetic pulse. And the second one is the thing where that, okay, our all communication, wherever SCADA, wherever all this electronics is lying, we bring them to at the one place. And this particular one, we as a make a shielded enclosure where all the facilities will be kept in this one, right? So it will be the whole metallic enclosure with the filters, EMP filters, with the honeycomb filters, everything will be inside that. So that, okay, you can concentrate more on in this protection. With this particular one, I will be saying that, okay, there are for the defense, we have got these are the three specifications which we follow. Millistandard 461, we have got the EFG, we have got this test vessel thing, and the millistandard 464C, that is the system level specification, and millistandard 25. 1 and 2 are the thing which are for the strategic C4I facilities, right? Which are strategic C4I facilities. These are the specifications which follow, and we have established these are the facilities for our system testing, for our strategic defense system. So this is that, one of the tests which we call we generate the 50,000 volt per meter field and other thing, and the type of the system which is to be protected. And then we have got the other one is these are called the conducted the direct transients we inject inside the system. And this is this type of the waveforms we have got. Then the facility moment we have got at LRD, we have got in the RCI Hyderabad, we have got the VRD Ahmednagar, we have got the Army Center for Electromagnetics, MAU, we have got the Bell Bangalore, we have got the Tata Power has got this facility. Samir Vizag has got the one of the biggest facility where we can put the article as large as 19 meter, or any type of the missile can be put inside. Then we have got the CS114 test, 116, what we call the EMP. We have got in all the LRD, AD, these are the DRDO labs where these facilities are there. Indian Air Force has got, Army Center for, and Naval EMC Center has got, Samir, all the three centers of Samir has got, Tata Power also has got, and even Wipro has got this particular facility. And there are these are the military point of view, but the civilian point of view, these are the new specifications has come. They are the thing IC. So now the thing that, okay, after some time that, okay, critical infrastructure of the country has to meet these requirements to survive. At the moment, we do the EFT testing, we do the dam sinusoid testing, we do the different type of the transient testing, but this characteristic of the EMP, which is about the E1, E2, and E3 pulse, will be now that has come as the specification. These are the different specifications which are available. And that is that are available in the IEC. I think the Gopakumar may be having that, and IEEE EMC Society is also doing that. Okay, its technical committee 5 is doing the high power electromagnetic specification generation, because see that, okay, this is the thing. It is not also the EMP. Now EMP we bring into it in the high power electromagnetics, and high power electromagnetics, when we talk about the thing, we talk about the NEMP, we talk about lightning EMP, we talk about the high power microwave, we talk about the P static, we talk about the ESD, then we talk about the intentional electromagnetic interference, which can be generated to create the problem, becoming the very important field in the case of electronics. So there are certain facilities which are there in the, that is that, okay, this was the first facility which was made in the US, that is for the missile testing. It is a 40-meter missile can be tested. Its height is a 40 meter. Is a bounded with EMP simulator. Then we have got, this is a trestle. This is the, if you have seen that, okay, electromagnetic, this is one of the best invention in the electromagnetic spectacle in the electromagnetic, where the B-1 bombers and all these type of the system, which is a trestle. It is about, say, 500 meter long. Is a 500 meter long, and this is the way that, okay, it has got the EMP simulator. Where that all these aircrafts and airborne systems being tested, and it is the thing that, okay, it has got a data ecosystem which senses at a time 1,000 points simultaneously. And then we are the dipole type of the EMP simulators, where that, okay, other airborne systems being tested. Then we have got for the shipborne, this is the impress system, which was been made for the shipborne applications. Then we have got the hybrid simulator, and this is in the France. This is then the, okay, we have got the other one is the hybrid simulators, where the thing, because this is as per specification testing. Then we have got the other type of the
Dr. Disipande, I think network is weak.
And immediate availability, you the
Sir, we lost you, sir. Dr. Pandey.
Now it is okay?
Yeah. Now better, sir.
Now it is okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now it is good. Now I've come. Okay.
Yeah.
So as I will just go back. So I was showing you these facilities. This is the Aris facility, which is for the missile testing. It was made in late 60s and 70s. Then this was a trestle, which was in the biggest facility, which is in the EMP field, which is there. It is about a 500-meter long facility which generates 5 million volts of the pulse in that one, and the system being tested. Then we have got the other one is this is called the dipole EMP test facility, where we generate the electromagnetic pulse of E1. Then we have got the Impress for the ship testing. And then we have got, this is the hybrid EMP simulator, because this has come the most important simulator. It generates whole the pulse, and it is a radiating EMP simulator. Then we have got, this is the under hybrid EMP simulator of the France, where that, okay, this is the simulator and this is the aircraft which is being tested. I mean that I recently had some discussion. They say that, okay, they have done initially that Rafale also being tested in such facilities. Then we have got the Sweden, that, okay, this is the other type of this particular facility, that is the aircraft being tested. We made this particular facility is the bounded EMP simulator at our LRD in beginning of 90s. Then we have got the indoor facilities. As I was telling, this is the one of the mission computer of the Tejas aircraft being evaluated for in this particular facilities. And this is a direct injection facility. With this one, if you have got any questions, then you can please ask me. I welcome the questions.
I would like to invite Mr. S. Gopakumar, who is the director of Cape Electric, having more than 27 years of experience in electrical safety, lighting protection, EMI and EMC of electrical installation. He has been conducting various seminars and webinars all across the country. And I know since last 1 week, he's been traveling to district in Kerala, length and breadth, and addressing all the electrical engineers over there and talking about the importance of electrical safety. And he has conducted many studies on failure in electronic equipment. So today's subject is one among that. And he is the member of working group of IECA and IS Technical Committee. And as all of you know, that he is also the member of the National Building Code 2016, and he has contributed immensely on various electrical safety standards in the group. I give this platform to our speaker, Sri S. Gopakumar, followed by we take question and answer. So those who would like to raise a question, there is a Q&A box below the screen you can see, and you may post your question in that. I look forward to, I welcome Dr. Pandey to remain, and we'll take up the question and answer quickly, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dominic. I hope my sound is clear.
Yes, sir.
I'm not switching on my camera because I'm in a place where the internet bandwidth is too low. So let me start the presentation.
Okay.
Now my subject is protection of modern electronics, fundamental requirements in the electrical system, because the electrical system must be stronger to support the electronic installations in case of any kind of a failure or any kind of a disaster. So I will just touch up some of the subjects which is very much mandatory. Just for the information of the participants, Cape Electric is a company involved in several business activities. We are into a lot of large-scale training of electrical engineers, but most of our trainings are not charged. These are free trainings. We are giving a lot of training classes. We are doing earthing and shielding and other things for on the electrical installation level. We have double insulated electrical enclosures. We are also having a company, we are also doing some kind of EMI, EMC and some small jobs, but with respect to the electrical system level. Our company is 25 years old. In fact, we are in February 2022, we will complete our 25 years of service. So now with respect to the subject, my subject, all of you know that EMI and EMC, it has got a source, a coupling path, and a victim. And also the intentional electromagnetic pulse, which is becoming an important subject in the future. That means even electromagnetic generators, which are mounted in vehicles, can come to smaller installations, and it can destroy electronics. These are going to be the threats of future. So what we should do is, protecting electronics is the important subject, but the electrical system in the sense, starting from the transformer, your electrical distribution boards, and all those parts shall offer certain or shall satisfy certain rules and regulations. Then only the EMP protection itself is possible. So the concept which is followed for electromagnetic or EMC protection is multi-barrier protection, in the sense, one moment, I just, okay. So multi-barrier, the protection concept is called as a multi-barrier protection. This is the one recommended in IEC. See, IEC 61000 series of standards talk about the EMI EMC. So there it explains what you should do to an electronics to protect, and what you should do for an electrical system and for a building and so on. Basically, against conducted and radiated effects of various kind of EMIs, a multi-barrier protection method is recommended in the IEC standard. Now, once when we come to the electrical safety standard, such as our IS 732 or IEC 60364, the same concept which is followed for protecting electronics is also adopted in the electrical safety standard, and the similar things are followed everywhere. Earthing, for example, earthing means equipotential bonding. If you make a very good equipotential bonding system, then your equipment will be very well protected. Now, with respect to the conducted and radiated surges, this is a symbolic representation. Each one is talking about, as Pandays are told, first barrier, second barrier, and the equipment. So there are barriers at various levels. Now, IEC is recommending a 6 concept protection plan for a facility. 6-point concept or 6-part conception, protection facility means the first one, the first shielding, for example, here, the first shielding or the barrier shall protect. This is actually your building. Your building must give certain amount of electromagnetic shielding against conducted and radiated surges, for example. Now, if we have a good quality electrical building, which is supporting to a modern electronic equipment, preferably the concept 3 or 4. This chart is actually from the IEC 61000. 2, 3, 4, and 5, they recommend this phenomena or this kind of a protection scenario for protection of buildings or electronic equipment in buildings, civilian facilities. So the protection concept 4 or 3 is actually possible if we design and install our electrical and electronic installation, or if we design our building in order with an aim to protect the electronics from such disasters of EMI. So with the concept 3, for example, the radiated disturbances inside the building, it still goes up to 5 kV, and these are the limits which is produced. Now, what I am trying to explain to you is, if you look at the any of the international, any of the standards with the EMI, EMC, the foreign standards like American standards or British standard or whatever, what they say is the basic electrical system shall satisfy the national wiring rule. That is regarding the safety. For example, if we look at the American standards, they always say electrical system must be as per NEC or NFPA 70. Both are the same. So over and above this, the other additional safety features are built in. When it comes to India, we have the IS 732, which is equal to the IEC, NFPA or NEC of America. This IS 732 is from IEC 60364, talking about the design, erection, and testing of the electrical installation. There are 4 major safety measures which we are supposed to include in the installation, out of which the 4th one, voltage disturbances such as fault in high voltage. The 4th one is the subject which is talking about EMI or protection of electronics. One of the first subject here we have to discuss is the system earthing. System earthing in the sense, how are we going to earth the electrical system? Electrical system earthing is classified into TNC, TNCS, TNS, TT, IT. There are several classifications, but preferably for a large scale area, a large scale installation where you have your own transformer, we are supposed to go for a TNS system for electrical installation and IT system for some of the critical items. But when it comes to India, the TNS is very clearly specified and written in the standard. But the question, are we following it really, is a question. Once when it comes to equipment earthing, electrical equipment earthing, the earthing, there are different purposes for earthing. For example, with a different application, I always try to explain this subject in detail, but today our subject is not about earthing, so I don't want to explain it much. So one should understand the purpose of earthing and do it. Like safety earthing, what to do, protective earthing, what to do, functional earthing, what to do, equipotentiality, what to do. Here, the biggest threat in our country is the misinterpretation of the standards. What we generally do is transformer neutral, 2 plates connected to 2 plates, body connected to 2 pits, and each building having multiple earth electrodes. Last week I was there in a data center. So they have about 70 earth electrodes all around the building. Few weeks back, I was in another data center. They have about 145 earth electrodes all around the building. So such installations are in real danger. They cannot think of protecting from EMI, EMC, HEMP anyway, they cannot even think. But still, they cannot even think of basic electrical safety, because the basic electrical safety things are also violated. Lot of buildings nowadays have this kind of earthing: clean earth, power earth, lightning protection earth, separate. This is also a big mistake. I request, please don't do it. Lot of earth electrodes, then interconnecting everything under the soil is also a wrong method. This is not the standard, or this is not technically what is recommended in the books or what is recommended in the standards and practices. Every building, the first part, if you wanted to protect any electronics, you must have the protective equipotential bonding. Of course, it is implemented for mainly for shock, protecting people from shock hazard, but it has got a role in protecting electronics as well, because now the concept of functional earthing comes into the picture, and you have to integrate protective earthing and functional earthing in a building. So if you don't have a protective earthing system in your building, of course, not even, as I said, EMI, you forget about EMI, EMC. You cannot even have basic safety. Your building will catch fire. If you have so many earth pits all around your building will catch fire during a fault. When we select electrical appliances in your electricity distribution in your building, at the point of commencement of supply, all the electrical apparatuses must be of category 4. That means a 230 volt item must withstand a 6 kV voltage impulse. The connected equipment must be of category 2, 2500 volt. These are the minimum voltage potential differences or voltage impulses the equipment are supposed to have. That means in your wiring, the minimum voltage impulse or the minimum category of the equipment is category 3. Connected equipment is category 2. There are equipment called as category 1. That means highly sensitive electronics. These highly sensitive electronic devices, we are not supposed to connect directly into a public LV supply. From the transformer, we are not supposed to connect. But this is actually the fundamental of protecting electronics or protecting the electrical system. If we really look into it, the question, are we really doing this in our electrical system, is actually a big question. Then the second part, which is influencing the protection of electronics, is temporary overvoltages, the equipment selection, the electromagnetic EMI current loops, and SPDs or filters. What is current loop or temporary overvoltage? Temporary overvoltage in the sense, in case I am just showing you a picture of a transformer, there is a fault, the indication of a fault. Here I am moving the cursor, a fault on the HT side of the transformer. Whenever there is a fault on the HT side of the transformer, there can be problems. TOV at the equipment means the equipment may burn. People may get a shock. Somebody touching an equipment may get shock. A good electrical installation must have protection against this problem number 1. That means whenever there is an electrical fault at the high voltage side of the installation, low voltage equipment must withstand it. And the permissible power frequency stress voltage is 1200 volt up to 5 seconds. That means every electrical equipment are supposed to withstand, or every electrical equipment connected to the electric mains supply from the transformer are supposed to withstand 1200 volt up to 5 seconds. But if we really look whether are we really doing it is a second question. Similarly, whenever we use a protective device or whenever an electrical installation is made, one of the important safety measures to be included is reducing the current loop. So current loop in the sense, and the best practice is you should route all your conductors at the same place, the same route. So as shown in this particular picture. So if you have a large loop, then the large loop as the first picture, it may create a lot of problems, additional problem. Basically, you lose the safety. Inductive coupling. For example, there is a electrical line. You have an SPD or a filter. The outgoing of the SPD, if the wire runs parallel to the incoming, then of course your equipment will fail. There is no safety which is ensured by the SPD. So segregation of the circuits, the input circuit and the output circuit, it has to be segregated properly so that unnecessary failures are limited. SPD or the surge protective device is an important product or an important component in our electrical system. What it does is it reduces the radiated electromagnetic effect or radiated electromagnetic pulse. What do? We have SPD and we take wires and connect the SPD. We should understand that the effective voltage which is going into our system is the addition of the voltage drop in the wires, the protection level of the SPD and so on. What is recommended in the standard is you have to have very, very short wire. If possible, the wire length has to be 0. But unfortunately, what happens, if we look at 100 electrical SPD installations in our country, almost 80 electrical or almost 80 SPDs are installed in this fashion. The wire length recommended is 250 millimeter, but more than 2 meters are used. As a result, most of the cases, SPDs are just like, namkevas. It won't work. For this particular purpose, you must use special SPDs like the bus bar mounted SPDs. The advantage of these bus bar mounted SPDs are you are directly mounting on the bus bar. As a result, the voltage drop, the line length has been nullified. There is no line length applicable. I'm just showing you a test result of an SPD. The first one, the blue line, is the voltage protection, the ultimate, the effective voltage protection level of a DIN rail mounted SPD, and on the other one, the black and the red color, are the effective protection level of a bus bar mounted SPD. Here, let us say, for example, the surge of 40 kiloampere, which is a very high surge, 40 kiloampere surge comes, the actual protection level offered by your DIN rail SPD is approximately 16 kV. In comparison, the bus bar mounted SPD, the protection level is actually less than 2 kV or something about 1 kV. So the problem of DIN rail mounted SPDs are once when the rate of change of current is higher and higher, more voltage drops on the connecting wire. As a result, most probably these devices won't protect your electronics. So you need to have really good quality product or good system like the bus bar mounted SPDs. Similarly, we should also understand that, for example, lightning, which is also an EMP, is not an one-time phenomena. Lightning probably is coming, very frequently. Maybe one strike itself, within 5 seconds or within 5 minutes itself, we will have multiple strikes. If we look at the conventional DIN rail mounted SPDs, these SPDs are tested for one pulse. Then the temperature, the SPD will heat up, the temperature is brought down to the room temperature, and then the next pulse is given. That means the testing in between the pulses, it has got a certain time, the cooling down time. This is allowed in the standard, but the lightning will not wait until your SPD cools down. It may come quite frequently. These busbar mounted SPDs are tested for multiple strikes. Say, for example, 2000 numbers of 10 kiloampere strikes, 100 strikes of 65 kiloampere. So once for critical electrical installation, you need these kind of high quality SPDs. As the shielding, now I skip this part. When it comes to lightning protection, all of you knows most of our the critical electrical installations, such as the metro rail, SNT buildings, or the SCADA centers of the power transmission companies, or the data center. A lot of places still the lightning protection as per the French code NFC 17102 early streamer emission devices are used. But please understand that the early streamer emission standard, which is the NFC 17102, the picture which I am showing is how to install an early streamer emission device. Early streamer emission, it is not a magic device which attracts lightning from 100 meters and sending it directly to the earth through one down conductor. This one rod, one down conductor, one earth electrode is actually a foolish idea. The standard recommends a proper equipotential bonding system. The French code explains a proper equipotential bonding system. Whereas in a lot of places, what happens, the rod is there, one down conductor, one earthing. The serial number, item number, serial number 2 to 18 is missing. Only one rod, and most of the time with long wires. So you forget, it won't work. Now, the last part, whenever your electrical system is completed, we are supposed to verify the system, which includes the inspection and testing. Similarly, an electronic system, during commissioning or after commissioning, we are supposed to comply the compliance as per the IEC 61005 standard, electronic system and information technology equipment. After installation, we are supposed to do a testing, or I'm not talking about the testing of an electrical item or a device. I'm talking about the testing of the entire system, system in the sense starting from probably an UPS and all the items which is connected on the electrical network. So this testing is also compulsory, but most of you knows this IEC 60364 10 tests are recommended in our IS 732, but mostly we don't do it. Similar is the situation for the EMI test. Mostly we are not following. So basically what I wanted to tell you is in order to have a high reliable electronic system, high reliable in the sense not even from the EMP point of view, but for having an electronic system which is protected from normal situation, like a fault from high voltage line should not affect the low voltage electronic equipment. So a lot of basic safety measures are necessary. But unfortunate to say that in our electrical system, are we following those things? Is if I ask the question, most of the time it is not. We are still following an earthing system which has been discarded since 1937 or 1940s. Still we go for this, 2 for neutral, 2 for body. This concept, this concept don't exist, but we still follow it, which is the first enemy of protecting these particular things. By this, I would like to stop my presentation. Over to you, Mr. Dominic.
Hello, 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 hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
We are able to hear you.
Hello, Mr. Dominic. Over to you. Sir, I think Mr. Dominic is having some problem. Probably you are on mute, Mr. Dominic. So we have some questions. We can take over the questions, sir. The first question is actually, which material is used for shielding? This question from Mr. Jaikar Patel. Pandeji.
Yeah. See, the material what we select for the shielding is that if it is a low frequency, where there is a magnetic field components or other things are there, so we select the MS. Otherwise, the most of the shield from the aluminum, right? In the that aluminum works the fine, but copper, if we some places we use the copper, but that is a very rarely in the special facilities like the MRI and other particular places, or where we have got the very low frequency communication type of thing. Because the low frequency magnetic field is the very important thing. That's why we use the MS. Some permeability should be there in that one. And the higher frequencies, of course, you can look for the aluminum one. And the magnetic field one will give the higher frequency also. It is not the thing, but the weight considerations and other thing becomes the important in the case of the MS.
Yeah. Sir, there is another question. Data center infra, the way we are building in metro cities, what are the different ways, feasible solutions to protect it from EMP at the time of project construction stage and infra is ready, we have to implement the solutions in existing infra. Probably I will answer this particular thing, sir. So yeah. This is the question is what kind of the basic things they have to, while construction, what are the points they have to take care? The points which you are supposed to take care is you have to, number one, you have to satisfy all the rules and regulations of the most modern electrical safety standard. Starting with, as I said, there are so many points, starting with system earthing, equipment earthing, equipotential bonding, shielding, routing, cabling. There are several subjects. One of the subject here is making your building, the rebars or your structural steel, equip it to protect or shield your electronics. So these things are actually necessary for electronic installation. If you do that, about, as I said, out of the 6-stage concept which is recommended in the IC standard, the stage of up to 2 to 3 is easily possible. Then over and above, for highly sensitive equipment, of course, EMP protected things are required, or EMP protected shielded enclosures are required. So in your infra, what you can do is, one simple question you can ask is whether the infrastructure is tested as per the IS 732 and IEC 61051. If these 2 tests are passed, then of course your installation is perfect to handle. So this is the question. Sir, there is one more question. Gentlemen, we request you to post the question in the Q&A. Now we are looking at the questions in the chat box. Mr. Dominic, can you read the Q&A?
I will just, sorry, I just went to the restroom and came back. The question to Pandey. Dr. Pandey, as per EMP or HEMP, do you also have solution for protection against cosmic radiation at high altitude? The background is that the government has launched ambitious project to set up a large GW scale solar parks in Ladakh, where the site altitude is in the range of 5,000 meters. Electronics, especially devices like IGBTs, are sensitive to cosmic radiation, which comprise mostly neutrons as per literature. Over to you, sir. This question is from Niket.
Yeah, Mr. Nikhil, that, the type of the cosmic radiation which are coming to the Earth, they don't have that sufficient energy. They are not so high energy. Yes, the electronics gets affected when you are doing some sensitive measurements and other things. That's why we take them in the tunnels and other thing to do the experiment. Because cosmic things are slightly different than the type of the thing. As you are saying, IGBT is sensitive to that, but not the thing that, okay, cosmic rays won't be able to induce that type of the transients, what we are talking here, whether it's from LEMP, lightning EMP, or say from the nuclear electromagnetic pulse. This is a complete different thing, and the energy of those cosmic radiations are not that sufficient. More than that, okay, we have got in the satellites where we have got the geostationary satellites, we have got the Wall-Allen belts where we have got the electrons which are, or the protons which are coming from the solar wind through the Earth's cusp and getting trapped in that one. They are in the mega electron volts electrons. So we have to protect our electronics of the satellites for those radiations. But I don't think that, okay, these cosmic radiations are going to be so high energy so they can induce a type of the field. Yes, that is okay. Your gold plate, gold film, that experiment of the thing that by which the cosmic radiation as the thing has been studied earlier in our childhood when we used to study. So that type of radiations are not sufficient to get the electrons damaged. Yes. If you have to do some experiment and other thing, the people used to go in the Kolar gold mines to do certain experiments and other type of thing. Okay.
Okay. Hope Niket, you got the answer right there. And another question before I go to Gopakumar, Dr. Pandisa, how harmful the EMIs are the normal mobile and communication tower installed near our residential area to human safety? Do we do something to help ourselves from these radiations? Question is from Harish.
Yeah, that see, there is this particular top of the topic of the radiation hazards to the human being from the base stations or say mobile things has been is a very important topic. Yes. In our country that, okay, we have already taken at the moment for this base station that you cannot radiate more than the 20 watts of the power. Earlier it was also allowed up to the 40 watts in the September 2016 onwards. I think it has been made now the 20 watts. You cannot radiate from the base stations. And that particular power which is being radiated from the thing is not, that specific absorption rate, what we talk about the thing, it is quite below than that. So yes, all the time that, okay, it is a cumulative effect. If you keep on continuously exposing yourself all the time and other type of the thing, so you have to be very careful about that thing. And if you are coming in the base stations, there are some dosimeter, microwave dosimeters are there. They can measure the type of the radiation levels at that particular place and can tell you that, okay, how much, because these are the specifications. These are the WHO specifications, these are IEEE specifications, these are AR specification. They are saying that, okay, this should not be more than the 3 milliwatt per centimeter square is the power density under radiation. So they should be maintained less than that. That will not affect. And the specific absorption rate, which we call the 5 watt per kg, that should be less than that. Okay, for the 2 milliwatt, it becomes a 0.4 watt per kg. That is the thing that, okay, one has to be careful.
Now I request the participants to post the question in the Q&A box, which you can see below your screen very clearly, because I have to read from the chat and then go back to the question answer. Again, once again, requesting, please post in the Q&A. This question is for Mr. Gopakumar.
Yes.
Electrical inspector did not give NOC for transformer if we don't have two body or two neutral distinct earthing as per the standard. Please clarify if it is wrong. How many earth bit for transformer shall be there?
Oh, thank you. So this question has got two parts. One is two neutral and two body earthing as per the standard. Actually, that statement is not correct. No standard in India has written to connect two neutral, two body. It's a misinterpretation of the standard. For example, the earthing regulation of the Central Electricity Authority starts with the earthing of the distribution system. That means starting from our transformer up to the house. There, the neutral wire has to be connected to two earth electrodes. But we misinterpret and we connect the transformer neutral terminal to two earth electrodes. So this is, it is a misinterpretation. Then if you are thinking, if the question is about how many plate or how many rods are required for a modern building for a transformer, I would say 0. So this is the answer. 0 in the sense, of course, your reference is the structural steel of the building. You don't need to have this plate and the rod and other things. It won't actually protect your device. Mr. Dominic, then there is one more question. Somebody asked why two body, two neutral is disadvantageous. Mr. Chandar Mohan asked. Of course, it is disadvantageous because it will, if you do in this fashion, people will get affected. People will die due to shock or fire hazard. Please understand that electrical, insulation failure or a fault is not a daily phenomenon. It may come probably once in 5 years or once in 10 years in a particular building, if you are unlucky. And if you have this kind of an electrical system with two separate, two for body, two for neutral, on that day, on that critical day, people will be in deep trouble. So please don't do it. Nowhere in the standard and regulations, nowhere in the world it is written, because it's wrong. So over to you.
Sir, last question I take it from the the chat box. That is from Nobi Sebastian. Is it advisable to use isolation transformer for sensitive domestic electronic instruments, mainly life supporting equipment or home media servers? Should I read?
Is it to me or?
Yeah, this is for transformer related, Gopakumar. Is it advisable to use isolation transformer for sensitive domestic electronic instrument, mainly life supports home media servers? Maybe for
you should refer the catalog of the manufacturer. If these devices are of category 1, then you should use an isolation transformer. You can look at the manufacturer's catalog.
One question last is any EMP affects the human organs? Dr. Pandey, does it affect humans other than electronics?
See that energy in the EMP is very low. EMP as the field getting like that, okay, the person, somebody has asked about the radiation hazards to the human being. The radiation hazard from the EMP to the human being is very small because the energy, the rise in the temperature, I could have shown some presentation of mine to the one PPT of mine that in which I calculated, because I myself export the, might have the 20,000, 30,000 of pulses in this EMP. So there's nothing like that because the human body gets affected with the rise of the temperature. See that when the temperature of the human body, I am saying that not the skin, it is the internal temperature when it increases, that causes the thing. And in the case of the EMP, this is, there's no effect because it is the single pulse which has got the energy is very less. Its energy is very less. But yes, in the case of the thing, if it is getting coupled to the long cables and other things, right? If unfortunately you have touched that cable, that particular may cause you some shock hazards.
So an important question from Yogendra Singh. Industry doesn't have expertise on EMP. During interaction with defense labs, they focused on testing, but doesn't provide any technical assistance to rectify the problem. Who can provide technical assistance to private industry?
There are the people, those who can provide the thing, because see that yes, the consultancy can come from the Samir Vijay. The consultancy can come from the Samir Chennai. And other places you can refer to, we have got a society of EMC engineers, where I am the chairman of the thing. You can write to me and other thing. I will, the type of your requirement, and we will tell that, okay, whom you can contact and whom you can go for this type.
I think Yogendra Singh, I have mentioned the email ID of Mr. Gopakumar. Probably you can write to me. We will direct that question to them. Again, you asked a question. Again, Yogendra is asking what EMI tests are applicable on standalone DG sets as per standard 461.
The mil standard 461, that okay, this is the radiated emission RE102, and then there are the there are certain standalone means that okay, there are some conducted tests from the output leads. Then there is the test for the radiated susceptibility RS103, and depending upon for which application it is, for the Army, Air Force, Navy, or I mean the platform, that okay, we have the platform for the generators in the ground-based shipborne, and these are the two places. So that accordingly that platform, we decide that okay, what the level of the field it is tested. And if it is a standalone, we don't do the conducted susceptibility test, which is the CS101, CS104, 114, 115, and 116.
So a very important question, both of you, I think more related to Gopakumar. Why these details are not updated in National Building Code of India?
See, National Building Code is talking about the electrical part, which is related to some during construction what you should take care. Instead, you can refer to National Electrical Code, the upcoming National Electrical Code. Not only the upcoming electrical code, the existing National Electrical Code 2011 already included the basic requirements which need to be taken care in the electrical installation. It's already there, but most of the time it's we are not following our own rules and regulations. That is the point.
That's true. That's absolutely right, sir. Look at the standards, not many consultants do follow that. Anyway, Nileshwar is asking how the severity of the EMP of natural origin is influenced by the altitude of installation above the sea level.
I couldn't get, Dominic, this.
I'll read out this again. How a severity of the EMP of natural origin is influenced by the altitude of installation above the sea level.
Now, whether it is in the sea level, that the high altitude EMP, this is nothing to do with the Earth's parameters. See, whenever we talk about the Earth parameter, is conductivity, is permeability, or is permittivity. See, it depends upon the thing that, okay, deposition region. In the case of the exo-atmospheric burst, the deposition region is between 20 to 40 kilometers with the tangential distance, however above it is. So this is nothing to do with the Earth. Yes, of course, when it strikes to the Earth, when this EMP comes to the Earth, so then that time, if it is in the sea, that there will be a field which is in the ship, which is falling. One is a direct, one is reflected from that, it becomes a double. We calculate twice the field to have the effect on the ship because the conductivity of the seawater is more. But generation doesn't affect with the Earth's thing. Of course, in the case of the surface burst, it has got some effect. Of course, in the surface burst, it has got, because in the water, the conductivity is good. If it is in desert area, the conductivity is poor. If it is in the marshy land like the Chandigarh or Punjab and other things, that is the conductivity is more. So the more the conductivity, that okay, magnetic field will be more because the return current will be more. So that will result in the more strong field.
Thank you, sir. The Mohammed Munawar is asking to Gopakumar, what are the tests which should be done as per IEC 6100005.1?
Yeah, there are lot of tests. You can look at the standard section 1 of the standard or annexure A of the standard. There is a detailed table given, which runs into, I think, 15 odd pages. It is also available in our website. We have put it somewhere in our website. You can download it. There are a lot of things starting, for example, not only from the electrical point of view, from the point of dust, moisture, and so many things are there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the Munir MP is asking, what is the rating of SPDs to be used?
I don't know whether the question is about the current rating of the SPD or the voltage protection level of the SPD. Preferably the first point to be taken care is the voltage protection level of the SPD, including the wire length. Preferably the lowest voltage protection level is the best.
So
then these are classified as, type 1, type 2, then type 1 SPD at the main switchboard, then the rating of the SPD, whether you have a long connected line or your transformer is very close to your line. All, depending upon all these questions, it varies.
So Kartikumar MS is asking, in a system for protecting sensitive equipment, can we use a SPD with discharge voltage less than 1000 volt through equipments are qualified for 1500 volt category?
See, number one, if the equipments are classified into 1500 volt, that means category 3 with an operating voltage of 230 volt. First point is you are not supposed to connect it directly on an electrical installation powered by a public electricity transformer. Number two, of course, if your equipment can withstand 1500 volt, you can use a SPD of 1000 volt, but ensure that the wire length is very short. Over to you, Mr. Dominic.
Sir, Mr. Rajesh Kumar asking Dr. Pandey, is there any code to implement or control EMF radiation to human safety?
Yeah, these are the, they are already code means they are the standards which are available, and that we in India also follow the WHO standard, and WHO standard follows the IEEE 90-3-3, and there are recently this has come. So we are following that one. Even for that, okay, clearance of the sites in the different particular places, we are following these standards with the electromagnetic radiation environment and that. These are the well-known standards.
Again to Gopakumar, Chandar Mohan Sachdev is asking, why two body, two neutral are disadvantaged?
Oh, the same answer. It can kill people during a fault, and it can catch fire. Your building can catch fire, electrical fire due to short circuit, because your MCBs won't trip. Fault loop impedance will be very high. Fault currents will be very less. That is not earthing. Yeah. Or
this Priya Brata Mohanty. It's a long question. I need to read it carefully. Hope we can understand, Gopakumar. People are using ESC terminals in the facility thinking one ESC terminal can protect the entire facility, as they don't want to go for conventional terminals as it will incur more material and destroy the look and feel of the building. And when it is said the Indian standard NBC don't allow, they feel India is not accepting modern technology, and if they get money, they will accept it. What to tell them? There's a question from Priyabrata.
As you know, I really don't know how to answer this question. The standards are very clearly written what you should do, and if somebody is using what is not desirable, then finally that is up to them, up to the user.
Okay. Question from Suresh Sudarshan Kumar. Is IS 62305 can be considered for powerhouse like Energy Center?
For the structure, yes. For the building and for its electronics up to 1000 volt AC or 1500 volt DC, yes, you can consider.
I'll move on to next question. Ari Kiran. To the earth fault protection get actuated, circuit need to be completed back to the source. So 2 earth pits are enough for the transformer, one for the main and one for the redundancy.
So 2 earth pits are enough for that one for no. This is again a misinterpretation. If the circuit has to be closed, then you should have a metallic fault return path to the neutral of the transformer. That means your body has to be connected directly to the neutral of your transformer with a metallic wire. That is a TNS system. With the earth electrode, of course, the resistance of the earth electrode gets added into this loop, which reduces the fault current, and even sometime a 10 amps MCB won't trip during a fault, which is really dangerous.
Sir, Nobi Sebastian is asking, in our area of 11 kV and LT are drawn through the same poles without any screening in between. What are the precautions other than SPD has to be taken?
Actually, this is a new problem which started coming in some places where through the same pole, HT and LT lines are drawn. Here, one of the problem is if we are using a TT system, TT system, where the neutral is also insulated from the pole. For example, the neutral conductor at the moment most often is directly connected to the cross arm. So if the neutral, that means the neutral conductor is not insulated. If the neutral conductor is insulated and if it's a TT system for public electricity distribution, then you get a kind of you can handle this particular situation. But at the moment the problem is our electricity distribution system in low voltage is neither satisfying the requirements of TT nor satisfying the requirements of TNCS with PME. If we really analyze, we really don't know. We have to make new standards for our public electricity distribution. So with this situation, it is very, very difficult to answer. Of course, in case of any fault on the high voltage side, your low voltage equipment may fail. This is what I told in the presentation. Whenever there is a high voltage fault, the LT side shall not get affected, and we have to design the low voltage side in such a way that it is not failing. There are methods.
Avinash Kulkarni is asking, any standard for EV chargers? Is there any standard for EV charger?
Yes, of course. There are several. One of the new one which is coming up is the National Electrical Code Part 3, I think section 22 or something like that. So there are standards. Also, Government of India already published the regulation. Central Electricity Authority published a regulation for EV charger, which can be downloaded from the website of CEA.
Okay. The last question for the day is addressed to Dr. Pandey. I wish this question was, posted in the Q&A to read much more clarity. though it in chat box. I'll try my best to read your question, Niket Jain. In one of the slides of Dr. Pandey, there was a range shown of 0 to 2 kilometer, 0 to 4 kilometer, 4 to 40 kilometer, etc. Could you explain that again? Does it mean EMP is more severe at surface of the earth at high altitude? Example, would EMP at ground in a place like Chandigarh be same at ground in a place like Ladakh, which is around 5,000 meters? Are there altitude derating factors in EMP, just like the electric clearances?
Yeah, I will make it very clear to you that, okay, when I'm talking about the, detonation of the EMP takes place at the three regions. We defined it. One is called the surface burst. The surface burst is defined from the ground 0 to 2 kilometers. That is called surface burst. Then 2 kilometer to 40 kilometer, we define it as a mid-altitude burst. And then that we talk when it is more than the 40 kilometer, if you have gone above our environment, then okay, it is called the exo-atmospheric burst. As far as the EMP, as I was telling you that, okay, the exo-atmospheric burst gives only the electromagnetic pulse on our earth. There's no other effect. As I told you, there is the light, there is a blast, there is thermal, there is a shock, there is a debris. All these things are not there. So it is the electromagnetic pulse which reaches there. That is the thing that, okay, that's why we call it is the EMP bomb, right? Now, this coming to the surface burst, when there is a surface burst between 0 to 2 kilometer, see the height of the burst is that, okay, your complete fireball should form. Your complete fireball should form. So it is, if you put on the ground, so the fireball will not form fully. So it is at a particular height, maybe around 500 meters from the ground and other thing. So this is not only for the EMP, it has got the other effect. It has got the blast, it has got the shock, it has got the thermal, it has got the heat waves, it has got the debris, it has got the all fragments and everything. Along with the other radiation effects means that alpha particle, beta particle, neutrons, gammas, and all these things are there. And that, as I was telling, there is a region I was defining around the blast. There is called the deposition region. After the deposition region, which comes maybe about, say, 3 kilometer, 2 kilometer, depending upon the bus, that is only the radiation region where the electromagnetic pulse comes. So whenever the surface bus case, the facilities to be protected for the surface bus, they have to be protected with the synergetic effect of all the nuclear hardening. But if you are in that particular region, so the question comes that, okay, if I have got a bust of the surface bus, they are called the tactical weapons, maybe about 5 ton, maybe about 5 kiloton, or maybe about, say, 20 kiloton, less than 100 kiloton are called the tactical weapons. And they are there when they have been dropped. The EMP from these bus, from the surface bus, is a very localized, like the lightning pulse takes place. But in the case of exo-atmosphere, I was showing you that India at the 100 meters, that, okay, how the half of the India gets covered with that. If somebody drops at 400 meters high, it will the whole, it is a widespread phenomenon. It's a very widespread phenomenon where the surface burst, which is 0 to 2 kilometer, is the very short range. So we don't bother after maybe 10 kilometer of the facility about the EMP effect in case of the surface. But if it is an exo-atmospheric burst, whether it is in the, the Leh, or whether it is the deep in the Kanyakumari, it hardly matters, because the wave is going to come and reach to the thing with the same type of the field, 50,000 volts per meter type. Over to you, Dominic.
Dominic, you are on mute.
Thank you very much for just letting me know that. We had a wonderful session today, and as you all know, Cape Electrical has been every month doing various knowledge series on electrical safety and electrical protection. Today was very important session that we carried out, and all of you must have read, seen Dr. Pandey's various qualification and the award he has been received. He's one of the most eminent scientists in the country, who's working for DRDO. And Mr. Gopkumar, length and breadth, is going around creating an awareness of IEC standard and the electrical earthing and etc. This whole event is supported by Focus, Forum of Critical Utility Services, and Fire Safe India Foundation. I want to thank all those participants. Technically, it's fantastic, and this is a purely technical. I am a non-technical person. Try to read out as best as possible, and learning is something that comes as a God grace. That as such a knowledgeable person, when you look at these scientists and the wonderful speaker, we think that India far better than the rest of the country when it comes to technicality, and wonderful people. And think these kind of webinars will help us to highlight the strength of our country, Atmanirbhar Bharat. And I'm sure you will continue to participate in various webinars. We are going to have soon on electrical safety that we are discussing with Gopakumar. We will come out with another edition on the same subject. And we'll keep coming out with expertise like Dr. Pandey to address us. Thank you very much. You all have a safe day. And please remember, this recorded video of the entire webinar will be on YouTube. It will be available. I'll be emailing to you. The link will be emailed to all the participants. Probably those who are unable to join, you can forward to your friends and colleagues. Next 2-3 days, we will share this recording of the webinar. Looking forward for your continuous support, looking forward to participate in our knowledge series. And any question on this subject, I have already in the chat box already mentioned Mr. Gopakumar's email ID. You may write to him, and question to Dr. Pandey also can be directed to him. Looking forward, have a great weekend and safe day. Thank you very much. God bless you all.